You know, when we think about what wins a war, our minds usually jump to the fastest plane, or the one with the biggest guns. But what if the deadliest weapon wasn't the one that dealt the most damage, but the one that just refused to die? We're heading back to the skies over World War II to meet an aircraft that wasn't the prettiest or the fastest, but it terrified Germany's best pilots, for one simple reason.
Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't some piece of Allied propaganda. This is coming from Adolf Galland, the general of Germany's entire fighter force. And listen to his words carefully. He didn't say it was the most agile. He didn't say it was the fastest. He said it could not be stopped. That's the word you use when you're talking about a force of nature, not a machine. It's the sound of a man who seems something that breaks all the rules.
So, that's our mission today. We're going to unravel this mystery. How did one American fighter, the P-47 Thunderbolt, get a reputation for being so ridiculously tough that its own enemies created the legend? What was the secret sauce that made this thing, well, unbreakable?
To really get it, we've got to start from the other side. Put yourself in the cockpit of a Luftwaffe. You've got this big, kind of clumsy American fighter dead in your sights. You squeeze the trigger, you watch your cannon shells rip right into it. And it just keeps flying. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it smokes, it shudders, but it doesn't fall. And this happened so often it drove German pilots crazy. So crazy, they gave it a nickname born out of pure frustration. Betonflugzeug. That's German for concrete aircraft. And trust me, that was not a compliment. It was a curse. It's what you'd call something that just refuses to acknowledge that it's been shot to pieces. Now, to understand how real this legend was, we need to look at probably the most insane example of it in action. And that brings us to the story of Lieutenant Robert Johnson. This is just incredible.
On June 26, 1943, Johnson gets jumped. And in the first 2 seconds, just 2 seconds, his P-47 is hammered by 21 20mm cannon shells. Now, to give you some perspective, for any other fighter back then, maybe 3 or 4 of those hits would have turned it into confetti. 21 was an instant death sentence.
His entire world just disintegrated. The instrument panel blew up in his face. The canopy shattered into a million pieces, and flammable hydraulic fluid sprayed all over him. He even took a piece of shrapnel to the nose. The plane was literally coming apart around him.
The Thunderbolt was completely out of his control, just tumbling out of the sky in a fiery spin. The heat was so intense that the ammunition in his wings started cooking off and exploding. I mean, this is it, right? Trapped in a falling, burning wreck. The story should end right here.
But it doesn't, because the P-47 just refused to quit. Johnson, somehow, miraculously, pulls the plane out of the spin just above the trees, only to see a German FW-190 slide in behind him to finish the job. And for 3 solid minutes, this German pilot just methodically pumps hundreds and hundreds of bullets into Johnson's already mangled plane. It was a cold-blooded execution.
The German pilot finally gives up, apparently shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And Johnson, flying what was basically a skeleton with wings, somehow dragged that plane back across the English Channel and crash-landed. When the ground crews got to it, they counted over 200 bullet holes on just one side, and then they just stopped counting. Johnson's story wasn't a fluke. It was the legend, come to life.
So, what was going on? What kind of magic was this? Well, it wasn't magic at all. Johnson surviving that was the direct result of a really deliberate design choice. The engineers at Republic Aviation hadn't just built a fighter plane. They had engineered a survivor from the ground up.
And the whole philosophy started right here, with the heart of this beast, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine. This thing was an absolute monster, and its size and design gave the P-47 its 2 defining traits: incredible power and just unbelievable toughness.
See, this is the critical difference. German fighters like the Bf-109 used these sleek, liquid-cooled engines. Super efficient, but they had a fatal flaw, a true Achilles heel. One lucky shot, one little puncture in a coolant line, and that engine would seize up and die in minutes. The P-47's engine was air-cooled. It had no fragile radiator, no vulnerable lines. You could literally shoot entire cylinders clean off this thing, and it would just keep chugging along. And on top of that, this giant chunk of steel acted like a 6-foot-thick shield of armor for the pilot sitting right behind it.
And this way of thinking went through the whole plane. Everything was over-engineered. It's like the designer's motto was, why have one when you can have 2? It had 2 ignition systems, 2 oil systems. The control cables that let the pilot steer were duplicated, running down opposite sides of the plane.
It wasn't just built to fly, it was built to get torn apart and still bring its pilot home.
So what does all this ruggedness actually mean on the battlefield? Well, it means the cold, hard math of the air war started to change, and fast. Because at the end of the day, war is a brutal game of numbers. It's a game of attrition.
Just look at this. German fighter groups were often losing over 15% of their planes on a single mission. That is completely unsustainable. You can't win a war like that. Now look at the P-47's loss rate, 0.7%. That's not just a small difference. That's a war-winning Grand Canyon of a difference. It meant Germany's best pilots were vanishing from the sky, while America's just kept coming back mission after mission.
And that ability to survive translated directly into being more deadly. For every P-47 that was shot down in air-to-air combat, they took down 4.6 enemy planes. You just fight with a different kind of ferocity, a different level of confidence, when you know your plane can take a beating, or 21 cannon shells, and still get you home.
And honestly, this is the most important part of the whole story. The real victory here wasn't just the kill ratio. In a war, your most valuable asset isn't the machine, it's the experienced human being inside it. You can build a new plane in a matter of weeks, but a skilled pilot with combat experience? That person is irreplaceable. The P-47's single greatest contribution was saving thousands of them.
Now this story doesn't stop in 1945. The spirit of the Thunderbolt, that core idea of putting survivability first, well, it's still flying today.
You see, the lessons learned from planes like Robert Johnson's, planes that were shot to hell and still came home, they were never forgotten. That DNA, that philosophy was passed down directly to another legendary aircraft, the A-10 Thunderbolt II. You probably know it as the Warthog. It is, in every way that matters, the ghost of the P-47, reborn for the modern battlefield.
In the end, it all comes down to one thing: trust. Colonel David Schilling led the highest-scoring American fighter group in Europe. They were actually offered the newer, faster, more glamorous P-51 Mustang, and they said no. They turned it down. Why? Because when your life is on the line, you don't bet on glamour. You bet on the one thing you trust absolutely to get you home. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for today, doesn't it? In our world of stealth jets, AI, and hypersonic missiles, we're obsessed with performance and technology. But maybe the story of the P-47 is a reminder of a lesson that never gets old, that maybe the most advanced weapon system will always be the one that's designed, first and foremost, to bring its pilot home. Because a weapon is nothing without the warrior who wields it.